We are here on the occasion of your exhibition on the Art Institute's Bluhm Family Terrace for the show, This Is How We Grow. I'm Robyn Farrell. I am a former associate curator at the Art Institute. I recently moved to New York and am a senior curator now at the kitchen, but I am delighted that this is my final project here at the Art Institute with you. And we've been talking about this and planning it over a little over a year. Mm-hmm. And so it's wonderful to finally see the installation come to fruition. And it's wonderful to have you here in Chicago
it's
again.
It's great being here. Great.
And I'm excited and anxious to get to talking about the exhibition, but I'd like to first bring us back a little bit to 1972. And I choose that year in particular because it's the date of a work of yours that we have in the collection here at the Art Institute, mm-hmm. Interlock, which is a very, very early work of yours. Mm-hmm. Right now we're looking at a picture of the sculpture installed in the Modern Wing galleries. And I thought this could be a nice opportunity for us to, travel back in time and hear from you about your medium of choice and how you got here. And we can talk about the work, but really hear about the beginnings of you working with wire rope and in sculpture.
Mm-hmm. Well, like many beginnings, it began with a rejection. I got an undergraduate degree at Bennington College in 1969, and Bennington is in Vermont State. I lived in Los Angeles. After graduating there, I moved back home, and I decided I wanted to go to graduate school. I decided I really wanted to be an artist. I had majored in art at Bennington, but I made the firm decision once I moved back to LA. And I decided, therefore, I needed to have more education. I needed to get a graduate degree. And hopefully I could support the career by being a teacher. Mm-hmm. So I needed the ultimate degree. I needed to get an MFA, Master of Fine Arts. So I applied to UCLA, and I got in. And I don't exactly remember, all the application thises and that's, but I assumed that since my undergraduate degree had been in a sculpture major that I was going to join the sculpture department. But I signed up for the sculpture department, but I was rejected. And I always felt that rejection had really to do with things that were way beyond my control, mm-hmm. and had nothing to do with my skills, abilities, mentality, or anything. And that, of course, was my race and gender. Mm-hmm. And so I was not accepted by either I don't know whether it was a faculty or a student kind of acceptance, because the whole thing was like a graduate situation. Right. And both the faculty, I suppose, and the students I was rejected. They did not accept me. It was it was a bad experience. It was like, wow, I went to Bennington College. I paid all this money. My parents are like freaking out about how much money they owe. And I got this supposedly superlative, education with all of these, practicing artists. And then, I come back to UCLA and the guys just don't want me. Mm-hmm. And I am pretty sure that it wasn't just the faculty. It was like, like everybody who's going to be concerned, the students, right. And, the faculty as well.
Somehow like a group.
It was like some like group
decision
acceptance kind
right.
of situation, which I think graduate schools, and rightly so, like people need to be comfortable with one another, but that was absurd.
Right.
So, I wasn't going to be part of their gang. And then a lovely man by the name of Bernard Kester, who had been teaching non-loom fiber techniques and various other softer materials kinds of explorations. And what had happened to textiles when it kind of became an art form, not just a yardage
beyond its
situation.
Material or craft.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
beyond material and craft, and become, really a fine art.
Right.
So he asked me to join his group, which was a very small and, as it turned out, wonderful group of young women. And I joined it, and he was fabulous. I learned so much about so much, and I really miss him. He was so supportive. And I have friends to this day from that group. In fact, I think my daughter's godmother is one of my fellow students from there.
From that cohort?
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm moving forward to an image which is a little bit later in the 1970s, and it's looking at your wire rope trees.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I know that Bernard was very influential and supportive of your development as an artist. And I'm wondering if you could just share with us, maybe not the exact moment, but how you came about wire rope and the sort of discovery and kind of the early experimentation that, from my perspective, knowing your background, in dance, and then your interest in sculpture and form, and how, this idea of movement and material came together in wired rope, galvanized material. So I think maybe that could be a nice thing to hear about.
Okay. Like, how did I finally get to the point that you can see
I know. I mean,
illustrated?
I'm getting to it because we've discussed it. And I know the story about you discovering it sort of when you were in a junkyard.
In a junkyard,
more or less,
yeah.
right?
It was a junkyard. It was I guess you call it surplus.
Sure.
But so I got in Bernard's class. He encouraged all kinds of experimentation, loom work, off the loom work, anything from macrame to anything you could invent. So I was, out searching around for things, and I noticed, like in this junkyard that wasn't really all that junky and didn't have piles and piles of stuff, but had like flat kind of burned out grass parts of it. And I was kind of walking across the grass, and I saw in a corner along an edge a piece of cable. And I saw that it was kind of undone, so that I could see that it was actually a piece of rope, although it was steel. And I thought, oh, wow. Since it's actually rope, it's something that I can use as material in my class,
Right.
and everybody will understand its construction and, why it's here. And but it'll be like sculpture, it's made out of metal. It's not going to deteriorate.
Right.
I'm going to be able to hang it outdoors. And wow, this is, let me get a piece of this and take it back.
Right, because it had a woven quality. It has a woven quality.
It's a rope.
Right,
It's
exactly.
literally a rope with a core. So if you keep unwinding and taking the whole thing apart, it has this beautiful wavy elements that make up the outside of it, just like rope. If you unwound rope and threw a part of it, an element of it, a twist of it on the ground, it would lay on the ground and, like the cords, it would be like that.
Form, right.
Yeah. So I took it back to class, and Bernard's eyes lit up, whoa. And I still do it,
Right. Well, so because we're looking at an image now of 12 trees that you did in 1979, I think it'd be great for us to learn or hear more from you about how your practice went from this idea of, say, interlock, which is
material
based, and it's material sort of coming back together again. And
it almost, to me, when I look at that piece, interlock, it almost says, this is how it happens.
Right. It looks that way because it is this spherical loop almost.
It's just
that comes together, but
yeah.
then you have, frayed the rope. You've unwound it to a point where it can connect. So
Yeah.
it's both connected, but it's also coming apart. And so this is, as you say, it is where it all began. But then you moved to a more organic form.
But also that first loopy thing of interlock, it maybe at the time I didn't realize it so much, but in a poetic sense, it's saying that these opposite ends are actually part of the same thing.
Right.
And they can link and be joined and be happy and fulfilled.
Right.
And rich and complete.
And there's a coexistence amongst difference, right?
And beautiful. As one. As one. Not parts.
Right.
One. So for me, that's a huge political idea.
Right.
And it's not a political idea that's favored by many people, or at least not most of the people you read about or listen to on the news. Everybody wants to be separate, unequal, and better than everybody else. And continuing to fight battles here, there, and everywhere all around the world to prove that you're better than that guy over there. Even though that guy over there could look just like you, you would be hard to,
Right.
Isn't that your brother? Why are you fighting?
Because we're all connected in the end, right?
In the end,
right.
We're
all part of the human race.
There's us. There's some bugs, crawling around. And there's some animals on 4 feet hopping around. And there's us. And it's only us.
And it's only us.
And we're as one.
You're right. And your work is so much about that. It was in 1972, and it continues to be today.
Right.
And we'll get into some of the, more engaging work that you've done recently over the last decade about newspapers and that. But I want to hold on to that for a moment so we can dive deeper into the kind of development of your forms. But it is wonderful to hear, and so poetic, as you say, to see the work that we have in the collection. Such an early work, such an important work that is it's already kind of telling the story.
It told the whole thing.
It's all there.
It's very complete.
If there's one work that could represent
the whole deal.
The whole deal, as you say.
And you got it. Lucky you.
And we are
and you better take care of it.
We are very lucky.
Don't mess with it.
We are very lucky that your work was acquired by the Society for Contemporary Art and then gifted to us in 2019. So I'm looking to see some of these other images. So what brought you? So you're working with this galvanized steel, this rope, and it was always about nature. Was there something that kind of you came from doing shapes or forms and then actually shaping the material into organic forms?
I don't know. I've always been really, I'm not an outdoorsy kind of person. I don't camp out or anything. but I've always really been interested in our relationship to nature and how nature seems to be shrinking somehow.
Right.
So for me to choose to do something that's made out of something that's totally person-made and machine-formed and all of that, but just to then pair it with trees and grass and sand and ocean and all the natural world, sky, clouds, all the natural world, to pair it with that and say that, what I'm really saying is we're all living here at the same time. We better just take care of each other.
Right.
If I'm saying anything, that's what I'm saying,
And it's clear in such a form like interlock, but I think too this idea that you have this, machine, man-made material that's representing ecological matter. And again, you have this interconnectedness, which continues to be a thread through your work, and that there's no separating the two. And that's sort of what I see with your work, is that there's no separation, because we're all we're all invested, whether we like it or not.
And it also, in a crazy way, it seems like whoever was involved with manufacturing steel in this way, in this rope kind of way, must have been thinking that too, because like rope, like fiber rope, actual fiber rope, is from very
it's inherent
natural
to the
things.
Construction of the material.
Right. Then to come along and say, you know what, we could probably even make something that would last longer than the natural thing, but we need that flexibility of that natural thing. So we got to make it in these strands.
Right.
And then we've got to, put these strands together the way we're mimicking nature.
Right.
Or we're mimicking a mimic of how to be strong.
Right.
We're mimicking a vine, finally.
Mimicking a vine, and then you take it, you don't subvert it, but you mold it back into.
Yeah, I say, look, you made this like this vine, so I'm going to remind us that you did that.
Right.
And then once I've done that, please pay attention to that, because that initial thing where people are walking around on the earth as people, needing the things of the earth, needing one another, needing to be safe and free.
There's an interdependence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your work is, it's ever present in that reminder. And
I hope so, but I don't know.
I think it's very true, and I can skip ahead to.
Well, all of it has, relationship to
to
things that you see around that are actually growing.
Well, I think that's this idea of the relationship to what's surrounding us and what's growing. And as you said, we are the places you've lived, Los Angeles, New York,
Bennington, Vermont.
Right, Vermont, Baltimore. These are not necessarily all bucolic environments.
No.
But we are all surrounded by things that grow. And over the years, you pioneered working with this medium, but you also, reinvented a way of reflecting a natural landscape. I mean, in many ways, you were able to re-envision and remake this material into something that is floor-based or wall-based, or reflects the way something emerges from the earth.
Or actually my particular emotional response to a variety of things. Some of it, discrimination of one sort or another.
Exactly.
Some of it just, thinking about nature being actually the parent of us all, and the vanishing quality, and, how we misuse so much of what's natural.
Right. We take it for granted.
Take it for granted and throw it out,
The waste. And that goes back to sort of your discovery with this material, and that you were sort of in this space of, things that have been a discarded space, and you sort of discovered this rope. And so in a way, it's also this element of your practice that's about reuse, right? And
it's also about, literally I wanted to be this dancer.
Right.
And so like I'm looking at a slide now piece called Whirling. And these are like whirling dervishes, and they're dancing in a circle, and they seem very, very animated to me, even after all these years.
Well, absolutely. And in this image, it has, there's almost a dozen of these floor-based works that at the top of each
they're bound.
Cluster are they're like they almost look like branches that are bound, and then
which is a fiber technique,
and then the
binding,
and so it goes from being very tightly bound to almost spilling out. These wires were
which is the same thing that you could do with your hair, for example. It's like kind of an upside down braid, like you bind off one end and let the other part open up. But since it's not hair, but wire rope, that's how it opens.
And it opens
Yeah.
up for not only the way that it interacts with the space, but of course the way that a viewer engages with it.
Yeah.
You can walk around it, you get closer, you can, and none of the forms are uniform. They're all,
No.
so it's
Handmade.
To me, what's amazing is you've taken, this machine-made material, but you've then reconstructed it with your own hands and thus inherently making them organic forms. And so it is, again, this full circle relationship between something that was based on nature, was developed by machines, and then you sort of retooling it for this kind of interpretation, whether it be hair or whirling dervish, and reflecting again the ways in which we experience the world and what you experience too.
And we're looking at a photograph of the actual piece, but we cannot forget what the photographer did for this. His name was Adam Avila. I worked with him in the junior art workshop at the LA County Museum teaching kids. He was a photographer. He taught the kids about photography. Taught the kids, painting, drawing, sculpture, clay work, that kind of thing. But I asked him, because I saw the kind of photo work he did, to help me by photographing my work after I'd completed it. That is why we're talking about this now, because that photo, everything I just said, he understood it. I didn't have this conversation with him.
Right. He was intuitive to him.
It. And he took that picture with that camera, and he did it for most of the pieces that you're going to see.
Right.
He passed away recently.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, gosh.
Seems like he was a collaborator in many ways.
Look at that shadow.
This is another image from Los Angeles, Southwest College Gallery, 1983, a field, which very much points to a work that's in the Art Institute installation, Paradise Regained, which can be seen as a field. And actually, here we are.
Yeah, here we are.
An image, it's a beautiful image that our colleague Michaela May took during installation yesterday.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful because it captures the drama of the foggy sky here in Chicago post-rain. And we see Paradise Regained, which is a work that you made in 2020. And it features a ground format that's cement. And affixed within each cement square are these waved strands of wire rope.
Yeah.
And of course, we know that it is an industrial form. But to me, being from the Midwest, living in the Midwest for many years, this mimics the indigenous plant life that you see when walking through a prairie field. And so for me, it's very much a field. And although, so the vision that we've had for this space is for this work to, again, touch on all the points we've discussed about the interconnectedness between industry and nature and the human interventions that are both, positive and negative with that relationship, that very fragile relationship, but also how it pushes back on the space itself. The Bluhm Family Terrace is an outdoor space on the roof of our modern wing, and here we have this very natural gathered form in conversation with very angular vertical buildings, which is a signature of the Chicago architecture, the skyline.
However, the things that make those buildings like they are, tall, skyscrapers, puncturing the clouds, it's the same material.
Right,
it's the exact same material. So it's very appropriate that it's right there, having a conversation with its cousins, or however you want to
It's right, the sibling, the offspring, the offspring of industry. And you can't see it from this image, but for those that are able to visit, you have a sense of the breeze, which is from the lake, which the, if I may call them, galvanized reeds are leaning towards. And we had conversations about this. Which way would we like the sculpture to lean? And it was a collective idea that we have this industrial sculpture, but we want it to lean towards nature. And a guidepost for any Chicagoan or anyone visiting Chicago is the lake. You ask for directions, you need to understand where you are, and the reference point is the lake.
Okay.
So, I thought it was really important for us when we kind of made that decision that, here you are in a very urban landscape, but your work, as it always has, is directing someone back to nature.
Pulling you.
Right, pulling you. Exactly. But so let's talk about the showers for a moment and the vision that is created, which is, we've talked a lot about how your work, of course, comes from material. It's man-made, but it comes ideally from material of the earth. And so with Paradise Regained, this sprouts from the ground, right? It grows in the ground. But with the showers, which are a series of suspended galvanized steel objects, they're hanging from the awning that is
the rafters
on the opposite side of the Bluhm Family Terrace. And so we have this 360-degree view of both the museum and the city. And we have something that sprouts up, and then the showers are coming down. So it really, for me, creates this encapsulating installation that really speaks to the way that we all interact with nature. And I know that the showers are new work that produced specifically for this exhibition, but I know that's not the first time you've done something like that. So,
it's a landscape.
Exactly. You took the words out of my mouth. That is no. I'm glad, because this is I was getting to that. Is you've created a new landscape for the museum, and I know that, I mean, your work in a lot of ways, you are creating these vignettes of landscapes. And so here on the occasion of our show, what's so special is that you're able to kind of engage multiple entry points into your work.
I don't want to get really simplistic, but like, what do we have as people? We have the land, we have ourselves.
And the sky.
Yeah.
Right.
And the stuff we build. That's it.
Yes.
Why we make a fuss about all of this, I have no idea. But we managed to find conflict with everything. So that's us.
And I hope that we can show a detail of the showers. But you talk through a little bit about how, each one of the showers is an individual suspension. And again, they're not uniform, because you and Cole individually unraveled the ends of each. Is that a typical way that you approach the material? And what were you thinking about when, one, knowing that the material is going to be outside, which you've done before, but how, because it's hanging, will interact sort of with the wind and the space?
I think the only thing I thought about was that it was going to be like rain. That's all I thought. I didn't think about, well, is this going to support it, or is somebody going to try to pull it down, or is it going to be inaccessible from an emotional point of view or an intellectual point of view? I didn't think about that at all. I just thought, oh, rain,
Showers.
Yeah.
And so when someone visits the Bluhm Family Terrace and is experiencing your work, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, about sort of the different viewpoints in the spaces. And from your perspective, how have you liked to view the two installations? Because we've talked about the fact that they shouldn't be seen really as two separate, and it goes back to what we were saying with interconnectedness. They're together.
It's a landscape tableau. Like when you go in the Natural History Museum and you go and you look at all the displays behind glass, it's like that, except that it's not behind a glass.
You can actually, again, be one with the sculptures
Yeah.
because it is nature.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how I see it.
And also, even specifically, it's the kind of nature that somebody who's alive now would emulate.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way you would emulate nature.
At this moment in time, right?
Yeah, if you were, being, poetic about it, or, I don't want to call myself a poet, please, but that if you were trying to make analogies with what you were making and the world we live in,
Mm-hmm.
and you were lucky enough to have fallen across some wire rope. It's a lot of ifs.
Like yourself, right?
But you would make these things and they would be ironic. I'm making a landscape, but look at it. It's concrete and this wire that looks like, grass blowing in a wind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they are. They're landscapes, and they relate to the land, and they relate to the condition
right.
that we are finding ourselves in.
Right.
And I think because they have a certain amount of aesthetic appeal, that there's still hope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There is hope in your work, which I think it's not all,
doom and gloom.
Industry
Right.
has brought us to nothing.
Right.
Because I think there's a sense of renewal.
Yeah.
And I think
possibility.
Right, possibility and renewal. And we had many conversations about your work on the terrace, and we worked through even plans like SketchUp to see what it would look like. But I think nothing really prepared us to see it in person. And I think Cole and I were talking about this today, and with Michaela as well. Your Paradise Regained and Showers both, the color, or the lack of color, really, because it is the same as the buildings in the background. So although there's this tension where these organic forms are pushing against the very sort of built structures and steadfast, high rises, they also blend in with one another. Because, as you say, they're the same. They're related.
They're related.
They're related. I think you said something yesterday of it's like this environment, this atmosphere birthed the installation.
That's right.
And I think that this is really the only place where they could coexist in such a way.
Well, basically, I just used the materials that they used to make buildings with.
I mean, constructing in a very different way, but again, leaving it open to think about the possibilities if we think more about sort of this, what nature and industry and their interrelationship and humans as an actor within that relationship, what actually we could do.
Yeah, where do we stand? It's a good question.
And I think that brings us to a nice place of... I'm sliding through some work to get to woman's work from 2014, which was part of the Radical Presence, Black Performance and Contemporary Art exhibition. And in this scene, you have strips of newspaper. You're with a group of women who have strips of newspaper laying across their laps, and you are tying knots.
Twisting and
knotting. Was this this wasn't the first instance, because you've been working on this mode of newspaper work, I think, since 2009, maybe, something like that?
I don't really remember the dates properly, but, over the years, I've been asked could you give a talk, or, could you somehow engage with the public? And so I thought of this activity, this taking of the New York Times, which is the paper of record for the states, stripping it by hand, getting each length, double side of newspaper and stripping it down into like 3-inch wide strips. And then twisting those strips together so that they wouldn't be as fragile. You know how, like, when you have a strip of newspaper, you could step on it and tear it or something. But no, twisting it like, I don't know if you've ever seen some women with long hair, distractedly twisting their hair.
I'm guilty. I am one of those women.
Well, pretend it was newspaper.
I've been consciously not doing it during us recording. yes, I'm familiar.
Okay. So we would twist and twist. We would first take a whole sheet of paper, divide it. So there would be 2 sheets of paper, put 1 sheet down, take the sheet that's remaining, strip it down into these strips, put those strips down, bring the other one up, strip that down into strips, put that down. Take the individual strips, pick them up, and then twist them like you might distractedly twist your hair, like when you're thinking of something and you're going like that to your hair. Well, twist these all up. So everybody has 10 strips in their lap of twisted newspaper. Then take these strips and tie square knots of end to end with each of the strips, end to end. It sounds funny to say square knot, but a square knot, and I have to teach everybody how to do a square knot. Square knot is very powerful in that it's very hard to pull it apart, so it's strong. And the ends follow the material that you've been using. When you just tie a knot any old way, what you'd be seeing instead of a length like that, you'd see a length. Then you'd see this kind of cross thing where you knotted something if you hadn't used a square knot, and then the rest of it. So I wanted it to be just one continuous line so that if we went to, we decided to make something else, we were not going to be distracted by the parts. Right. It would just look like a rope, a continuous rope. So I know it sounds crazy, but I do believe that a lot of people learned how to tie square knots. And I think, it's important.
It's a good skill to have, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, you should be able to tie a knot. You can brush your teeth, tie a knot.
Right.
And make it a good one.
Right. Right.
A lasting, strong knot. Yeah. So that's what we were doing. And
from there, there have been instances where even here at the Art Institute last year, when the Society of Art Contemporary invited you to give a talk.
Isn't it funny?
We're looking at images not from the Art Institute, but we have a slide up of really Maren and Cole holding a sphere of twisted and knotted New York Times newspaper, and we're laughing because Maren happens to be wearing, I think, the same shirt that she's wearing today. But but the focus of the image is this sphere. So there have been different forms. So it's sort of like you have these workshops, but it's not just it's not just we tie the knot in the newspaper and then it just goes into recycling. It's something else is made. There's an outcome. And you have done these sort of globes, which of course brings us back to this idea that the daily news, the physical hand action comes together, creates something. And again, it brings us all back together. As one. There are many hands that went into this, into this exhibition, including Michaela May, who's curatorial associate in the Department of Modern and Contemporary Art, our incredible staff that helped install. And then I'd be remiss not to mention Cole, who works with you. Cole Palatini, yes. And Josh Leff, who isn't with us, but he's back at the studio, toiling, I imagine. Yeah. And so all of you come together to create sort of these expansive works and installations. Yeah, we're all working on it. In many ways. Yeah. I wish everybody everywhere would be working on it. And then we'd be together. Much better. Yes. Now, it's very interesting because there's, we're looking at a screen that's showing shots of people twisting and tying newspapers. And one of the shots, Cole and I got this big ball that we've managed to make out of all the parts. But in this one, now here, this is very interesting to me. And I never thought of it before. But here you have a young man that's very intent on twisting these. And look, he's a very young, muscular, powerful, young man. And he's doing this and he's really into it, It looks like he's looking to you for direction in the image. And he looks like he's enjoying himself, So what I want to say about that is, well, this is a really good thing if it can bring a bunch of different kinds of people together and
everybody's enjoying each other and enjoying themselves, and they can really get behind that they're making something.
Coming together for a common purpose,
Yeah,
right?
and you don't have to be, any particular size, shape, gender, history behind. You don't have to be anything. You're just sitting there twisting things. And I think it's just like a wonderful, idea that could bring people together.
Well, we are going to be doing this tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
And the weather, thankfully, is going to, it looks as though it's going to agree with us, and we can actually do this on the terrace.
Oh.
Which will be quite nice.
Oh, that'll be nice.
Right.
Sunny.
It'll be sunny. We had a backup plan in case. But we will be able to host that here at the Art Institute, which we're very excited about because everyone can come together on the occasion of this exhibition. And I think that there's been some discussion about when the sphere comes together, we can live here in the museum in a different way than Interlock, but to be able to, I think we're
Well, I think in a poetic sense, by us working together with something like a newspaper, like a paper of record, which includes stories about all of us living sentient beings worldwide, and then tearing that apart and twisting it all up and ending up with this big globe. There's something very, very poetic about that, don't you see? This big
indeed, yes,
globe that we've all contributed to, and we can all take credit for. And
we all had, obviously, but we've all had a hand in
all of us
in doing it.
Yes,
and there's. When you do it, your hands get quite dirty.
Yeah,
but I love that. I love it because, the newsprint rubs off. And it's like you were saying, there's differences among everyone that's involved, background, culture, young hands, old hands, but we all
get dirty.
We all get dirty because we're all in this together, and the residue is there. And I think that that's really powerful also, that we're all creating this together. And it does come, again, I'm going to make another awful pun, but it's coming full circle.
Yeah, and it's hugely poetic.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Your installation's going to experience it's going to see all of the seasons from fall to spring. So three out of the 4 seasons here in Chicago. And so whether it's crisp fall day or rain or snow or a sunny day in the spring, what can you share about what you were thinking about with making this landscape for Chicago? And if you could give us a little insight into, maybe we've talked a little bit about how the cityscape, informed the work, but what would you like to have somebody experience when being here in person versus what we've been describing for those that may not be able to visit the exhibition?
Well, basically, I'm alive now, making things now. So the things that are around me are the things that are my inspiration. So all of this use of wire rope, it's very beautiful. It's really very beautiful. But it's steel. It's not a rose. It's not something that grew up out of the ground. It's something that somebody invented that's extruded. I often think of it as like coming out of a meat grinder, But that's because I know about meat grinders. I really, am not 100% sure of how they make wire rope. I shouldn't maybe share that, but I do know that what it represents for me is a place where we are now. Industrially, culturally, aesthetically. I mean, you have to say that the buildings that get built and use these kinds of materials are very aesthetic buildings. We live in them. We feel safe in them. It's our nature. In a sense, it is definitely our nature. And so I guess what I'm saying in a nutshell is this is our nature. And it can be beautiful. That's it.
I think that that's a really wonderful way to think about this particular installation in Chicago, because although we are outdoors on the terrace, we are mostly surrounded by buildings, and Chicago is known for its architectural skyline. And so it is really quite perfect for you to describe not only your work, this landscape, it is the nature that surrounds us, but it is embedded also in the urban nature, the urban landscape that surrounds the museum, but populates obviously a good majority of what people associate with Chicago. So,
and like when people look at paintings in museums, and they're made several centuries ago, and they can say, "Oh, that's a beautiful painting. Oh, look at that beautiful landscape." Well, we are living in a different time, it's so different that what I can make of a landscape sculpturally out of the materials that I find available now can also be beautiful. Like that same landscape that you went into the museum and admired as a painting that's 200 years old. So think about it.
Right.
If you're looking at it, it wasn't made 20 years ago. It was made, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, out of things that are part of my life and my history. And I made them with a great deal of sincerity. I wasn't like joking around about it. I wasn't saying, oh, how funny, a field of corn steel. It wasn't like that.
Right.
It was a lot more like sincere.
Right, and intentional. And I think the intentionality of the installation is, especially, with the showers coming down from armature of the building, is such that it's such a wonderful reminder that you have created a landscape for visitors to experience in real time, which, I love that you linked it to the landscapes and the history of the paintings that are inside the building. What I've always said about what's so special about working with contemporary artists in a museum that tracks thousands of years of creative thought and history is that you are always in conversation with history. And so with this work, you're in conversation with history, but you're also in conversation with this moment in time.
Yeah. Like it or... love it or leave it.
Right.
That's it.
Well, I think that's what's really powerful about the work.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.